So hello, good evening, everyone. It's Tuesday, June 27th, and we're meeting as the Policy and Curriculum Committee, last meeting for the school year 2023 here. So maybe I'll just go around and we're going to just briefly say who you are, and then we'll just share what our hopes were for this maybe abbreviated meeting this evening. I'm Aura Russell Better, Chair, District 4 School Board member and Chair of this committee. Would you like to just say hello for a second, Co-Superintendent, and then we can go around to the
Sure. Board. Okay. Good evening, everybody. Co-Interim Superintendent Aaron Townsend.
Julia Ann Opperman, District 3 Representative.
Vicky Bondo, District 1 Rep and Vice Chair of the Board and member of the Curriculum and Policy Committee.
And Sarah Lynch, she, hers, Board Chair, not a member of this committee, but here. And I'm getting a message that my internet is unstable, so if I freeze.
Okay. Thank you. And board member Nyla Billio is a member of the committee, but wasn't able to attend tonight. Superintendent Townsend, I don't know if we even have minutes do we have?
No, we've gotten consistent across the committees that the kind of recordings are the minutes, right? There's no formal expectation of minutes, okay. In the and so forth. So
I think I now remember that, but thanks for the reminder that that's across the committee policy. Great. So I think for this evening, I was hoping to maybe just do, about an hour, a little less to meet tonight, but I think the hope was maybe just, wrapping up the year and at the last board meeting, we were able to kind of hear from all the committees. And, I shared not every piece of policy that we passed, but some of the highlights for the year. And so just kind of hoping to queue up some priorities for the coming year. And I was hoping maybe I had up what I had noted at our last board meeting, but hoping Aaron could just, help maybe a little bit with time frame planning for some of the pieces of work that we know that are coming, and then to just hear from board members about, priorities within those, and then maybe also any other, upcoming hopes for policy and curriculum in the coming year. And just briefly, Aaron, maybe just to think of, so we'll be continuing to do policy. I feel a little bit lighter in the area of curriculum understanding. So maybe that would be, actually, I'm just going to pull up that Google Docs of the annual report. So I think the one piece for curriculum was really the deepening implementation across the buildings of the ELA and science curriculum and some of those other pieces. And then maybe that work group regarding restorative practice. So those were the two I had in mind, but maybe anything else it might be helpful to just get us grounded in what's already there and what's upcoming. So.
Yep. And I would even potentially, Nikki, look to you to as well fill in from you're the longest standing member of the curriculum committee in this particular configuration. So interested in terms of just historically, but, and how that may inform priorities of what we manage. But I think what I would say is even the carryover. So I know, what we reported out, we have kind of a carryover piece of policy work that we began to engage in around the challenge materials. And my understanding was it was going to be useful given that the prior revisions happened everybody, but or pretty many of you, that it'd be useful for us to do a little bit of a board workshop on that holistically on those. There are a couple of related policies to just level set shared understanding, then come back to understand this specific proposed revision, which we can move through the curriculum, this committee right back up to adoption. So that was my understanding of just kind of that carryover body of work. And nominally, that actually was those original changes happened through the curriculum committee. So the curriculum committee also was responsible for various policy changes as well. So it was not solely the kind of domain of the policy committee to do policy changes, but curriculum related policies. And same is true for finance and operations. There may be transportation policies or something like that come out of that side of the house. So anyway, just to say on that side, I think broadly as you named, kind of related to our, kind of core teaching and learning priorities, that feel relevant. And we did, some of this. I'd like to do more, of just the implementation checks and background. So yes, the curriculum work more broadly. How is the ELA launch going and some of the other related pieces around that? So I could imagine how we would, kind of try and think about, a series of engagements over the course of the year that we, could plan out. This can be part of what we plan towards and come back in terms of kind of like a work plan at the August meeting. And then similarly for the domain 2, kind of priority 2, safe and equitable schools work. So certainly the restorative practices stuff, but, there's stuff more broadly, certainly curriculum related, the SEL, kind of vision and curriculum pieces of work that have kind of happened would be a good specific thing to kind of engage and build understanding around, in this space. So that's underneath that broad umbrella, that's probably a useful specific one. So I think those things, and then, the other just kind of related initiatives that it felt like it was be useful for this to be a place of kind of dialogue and deeper understanding. I mean, there are, commitments to the full board, but this is a place to begin, yes, as was named, just the ongoing kind of high school work, right? So reporting out, through this structure on the next steps as we start to move towards, obviously some of that'll tee over into facilities as we get to the actual application, but monitoring the development of that work. And then similarly, it feels like the ESOL resolution, while it wasn't specifically named within the context of the resolution, in the same way the high school work was kind of tied to this committee. It felt parallel just as kind of an initiative and launch for that to provide updates, across the course of the year in terms of status of that work. And particularly for that, for both, some of this comes back around to then as we are working through it, understandings of like, what are the potential resource implications, right, around those things or not, or how we might be approaching those issues. So just from a high level strategic sense, both in terms of our teaching and learning priorities and those two other related things, those felt like meaningful content. I think, just to kind of frame it up, I could see a couple other, obviously we're always kind of a bit responsive of, if there's particular policy things that are jumping out. We had paused this, and I'm not sure I would propose renewing our time to be spent, but we had been doing kind of a book by book review and updating, of policies, some which were very nominal, name change, gender pronoun usage, things like that for many of them, but just, to have done a pass, but we had kind of stopped at book D. So that is a body of work that we could consider taking up. It's pretty labor intensive just from a fine-tuned, redlining of things. That's something that, anyway, I think otherwise you end up with policies like the summer programs policy. So that was just like of a handful of things that are going on, that might be relevant. I don't think there wasn't anything that was jumping out to me that needed a long, deep, deliberative, like engagement process at the moment, in terms of our set of policies, given the work we've done on some of the other ones over the past couple of years. But there are some that probably need some updating. So the two, and these were more on the instruction side, that may be, useful to get done at some point. The summer programs one hasn't been updated since 1992. Talks about charging people fees for things and so forth. Some of that's for stuff that we wouldn't be offering for like driver's ed, and whatnot. So it certainly feels very out of context for our current reality. So that's one that potentially could use a little bit of, addressing. And then, we've run into some, and needed to, this came up with the high school leaders and maybe as part of the high school work, just the revisions that happened at the high school graduation policy that phased in some of the proficiency work. Where we landed at 21 units of proficiency. This was kind of the transition. There are some technical challenges with our student information system in terms of the administration of that. in terms of what students and families see on their end. So we need to do some reconciliation of that. Again, that feels like policy cleanup, not major substantive policy, kind of development, right? As I would say, like major either policy overhaul, development. I mean, that was like the equity policy, the discipline related policies when we did that equity audit, the law enforcement related policies. Those were kind of deeper versus kind of policy cleanup issues. So those were just a handful of things, and we could, I think, think about a little calendar of engagement.
Yeah. Aaron, could you help with just, because I want to just, have a chance for everybody to share things, but I also wanted to just get a little sense, like if you had time frame for some of those things, like were there things that I know the high school work was done today, right? So I'm not, I know there was some portrait of graduate, right? Like, and I don't have it in front of me. So the time frame of that, but it would help me to kind of have a sense of what's the time frame looking for that for committee work, and then also maybe the work group, restorative practice, like just a couple of those curriculum pieces first, maybe just to see like it might fit in the time commitment, I guess.
I haven't. I'll acknowledge I haven't thought deeply about that.
That's okay.
Off the top of my head, I could see strategically. I think it might be useful to come back to that policy. Kind of selection of educational materials, the like book challenge policy sooner rather than later, just because we'll also be getting going, with the year. Because I think many of those other kind of just, kind of monitoring and implementation updates, right, will need a little bit, to move forward before we have relevant updates. But so I don't know, what was coming up for me though is probably it potentially would be strategic to engage in October around the high school work, just as another vehicle, to frame up where that work's going for the year. Because I think while we've done some communications and engagement around it, the arc towards submitting the application is going to require a much, an even deeper level of communication and community awareness around what we're doing. So I could see value in having, some update about the work plan for the year on the front end earlier in the year. So I was thinking October, just because we've just started school. And then I don't know, it could go. I feel like it would be wise of us to probably just think about one of these a month, right? So that there's a little bit more room for other work as it comes up, and we're supporting things as we're going along. So I don't know if off the top, I could see then going to like the school climate, school culture stuff in terms of how that's launching for the year in November, and then like curriculum updates in December, broadly speaking. But
all right, I had a couple questions, but why don't we just see what Chair Lentz and Member Opperman wanted to throw in.
I can wait till the end if other people want to go first.
Well, I was more, I guess, I just had a couple questions, Aaron, about a couple policies that I was like, did I miss where that ended up? Just wanted to kind of see where those ended. So the JFABD, the homeless students one, like I was looking back, what happened? Because it was like a March.
Yep. I had, no, that is one to come back. I had that out to Priscilla, from our conversation for some input. So that's kind of close off.
Okay, but we had done because we had it as a topic, and then but we didn't vote it out. We were going to come back with it. Okay.
Yep, there was kind of feedback from the committee. I brought that back to Priscilla, and we need to kind of close that loop. So that's so
that one could probably be not a very complex, but just to get that one
right. Yeah, okay. I think there was some kind of modernizing of it. It was outdated.
Okay. And then definitely think the library policy, IJJ, should be a priority. And I'm forgetting the staff person's name, but I think, May, thank you. I had the understanding that there was some summer plan for her to be engaged with us. Is that right? But I don't want to assume that in the summer that works for her.
Potentially in August. There's
August.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I think she's available for.
Okay, great. And then the other one, Aaron, was just the ACAB, the harassment of staff. So just kind of, and maybe that could just be for tonight. We could touch on where does everybody feel, but that just feels like another piece, because we had done the workplace bullying one. That was mandated for us to have, right? But we haven't gotten to, but that's a big piece of work, right? So
it could be.
It could be. Okay. So just, I guess maybe that's what I would love to hear, where people are feeling about that harassment policy as a priority. So go ahead, Chair Lentz.
My questions are more logistical. I think board docs is great for a lot of things, but I think also it's hard to use board docs to like look collectively at things like. And I was just wondering, like, do all of our policies live in like a PDF that gets updated, or do they just live in board docs?
I mean, that's a Kate/Janet question of like on the back end. I believe though the answer is really in board docs. They live as separate individual kind of policies. Yeah. And
like, even because I'm just interested in even seeing like, and I can create this if we need it, but just like a list of our policies and like when is the last time that they've been revised, because like just like looking in there, it's like there's stuff from 2002 or, early stuff that is like, oh, like, is this something we need to be looking at or not?
Let me check to see if there is kind of like I have not seen like an overview table of contents, like just overall policy tracker kind of in that way. If this is the policy, this is when it was adopted, this is when it was last revised. That being said, I have a project to finish up updates. Anyway, with Kate that we're going to do in July. So that could be something that either she finds in Janet's deep dark archives or establishes as a part of this to ensure we're starting the year with everything up to date on, at least up to date on most recently approved versions are all live on the web.
That would be awesome. I think as a tool, just so we can see more holistically where we've been and where we possibly need to go. And I think like and also I just like acknowledge that this is the way that my brain works and needs support in working, which is also to kind of like, I know I can go back to get the notes from every meeting, but like, from the last like 2 years, even, like if we were able to just like compile what has been worked on, and Aura, like I'm happy to work with you around this. Like I don't want to create work for people if it doesn't already exist. Like I'm happy to, we've got some time in July. So I'd like to invest in some tools like that, because it just feels like it's hard. And I think it's hard for new board members also to come in and not understand where we are. And so I think that sometimes can lead to questions like we saw around the library thing. So just like, and I'm going to be having this conversation in every committee, but like, how are we better like tracking where we are with things, and how are we better planning how we move forward?
Yeah. So I have started something like that for essentially since the onset of the pandemic, or I forget exactly when, because I was going back essentially during my time, kind of to ensure that everything, because in the transition from Janet to then Anne to, the lack of stability in the board secretary role, we've got some of the most urgent ones updated, but I was trying to ensure. So I have a list like that of these are all the policies over the past, I think 3 years now, maybe, that we have engaged in. And so we can refine that a little bit. So I would say, don't do that because I, did that. I'm going to have Kate double check it. So.
Awesome. Thank you, Aaron.
That good for you for right now, Jones? Okay. Go ahead, Member Opperman.
Okay, thank you. On that note, on the policy list and going through the policies, if the staff is overwhelmed, I'm certainly willing. I mean, of the people on the board and of this community, probably the person with the most time to go through and say, that one's fine, or that one, or whatever needs in the things prior to your being on the staff. The book challenge material thing, I'm not concerned about book challenges, but there was something that came up, and it was related to health curriculum. Now, I don't know where that fits in with the challenge materials or the like, but it was something based on, essentially, in middle school health section, that some of the sections where it's more explicit on anatomy or whatever, and individuals with either the Muslim or extreme right Christian might feel uncomfortable, boys and girls. I mean, it's kind of a difficult thing with talking about our equity and talking about acceptance of everything, but there are, strong cultural things that may be offensive, or, and parents don't always know that they can opt their students out of those because for whatever reason. So I think that piece, I don't know where it comes into curriculum and all, but that came up to me this year from a couple sources, and I just wanted to address that and make sure that we got to that. And maybe it is when we're talking about the challenge materials or how we go on that. I was at the meeting today for the high school all day and that sounds like they got a lot done. They got a lot done. They're an amazing group. And I wanted to say that it sounded like they were starting up they've got it with going again to the community, going again and presenting what has come from this year's community and rewriting it and getting it into some kind of need for about mid-year, about January, February, to where you start building by the end of the year, the plan for to apply to Augusta for schools. So that was just something that I heard today. It was really quite interesting, the work there. So that was a piece. I guess as we talk about curriculum and we talk about policy, I'll be honest to everyone, when I voted for the ESOL, I do believe that all teachers and all faculty, all staff, and anyone who possibly needs to connect with students or just connect with anything related to students needs to understand English second language kinds of issues. Not that they know how to always deal with them, but to recognize them. But it was one more thing on the plate. And so as we look at, Carl, our curriculum policy and our curriculum development and movement, and that I don't know how this committee can, whether it's this committee or whether it's the buildings or how to deal with that. Erin, it's a concern I have that we have good ELA. We have a math program that from what I understand, I've been reading about is good. Science is building up. And I'm just wondering how we prioritize those. And what we say to faculty, no, you don't have to do all these at one time. These are the things that as we go through K through 16 or K through 12, we prioritize to make sure that our students, as part of their portrait of graduate, are strong. Am I making sense to all this? I'm just talking a lot. So any feedback from anybody on what I've said?
I would just say, I do think that just on the health curriculum and related policies, I do think that it would be worthwhile to do something separate and distinct. I mean, that is, I think of a couple policies different than the selection of educational materials. I think that is a little more narrow than just, but there's a health education policy of itself. Right. So looking at that, and then there is kind of like related to, teaching sensitive subjects and so forth, some opt-out language. So I think it would be useful because you're right, that is something we navigate a fair bit. And so building understanding of what is our curriculum and approach, right? And what are the kind of policies related to that, would be good to just build, our shared understanding around that work, because I think that's evolved a little bit. So I could see that being useful as its own topic. And then just the last one I hear you talking about, just kind of strategy around staging curriculum implementation and the other things. And so I think within, maybe it's more appropriate as we're, we can talk about ELA, but, it's to your point, to some degree, ELA is not the only curriculum thing happening, right? It's obviously, there's a big effort at it next year, but there are also, and not to get into it now, but when we get into it, some schools and grade levels have opted to do science also, right? So we have been trying to defer decision-making in this coming year for some things to various grade spans and, grade levels, even in buildings. But I think the, deeper conversation about, as we're thinking about, resources and strategy around curriculum implementation. So
can I just say one quick thing, Julie, what you said about the health? I was wondering, because Aaron, you mentioned doing maybe a little SEL overview, and I was wondering about health curriculum overview, because health, there's been that vertical teamwork, right, in the past year. So I wondered about having, some at the committee level, just a little overview, what's going on with SEL, what's going on with health curriculum, just so that, we are more well-versed about, the work that has been going on, because I feel like we don't, get to that detail level. So
maybe it's almost a standing feature. There could be a different vertical team update.
Yeah.
The year, just
I think that
not necessarily as a deep dive, but just as what is the conversation happening in collaboration with educators around this work this year. And
I would say, Julie's saying you're getting questions or feedback about health. I feel like SEL is one that I feel like families ask a lot about too. So for us to understand kind of where the work is at and where it's, so that might be helpful just to have regular vertical team updates or something. So, but go ahead, Julie.
We don't do minutes, but personally, just even thinking about the few months I've been on here and all the meetings we've had, without going back and looking at all the videos. I mean, I tried when I was last fall to watch videos, and oh my goodness gracious me, it was, it's hard. There are people that watch all these videos like Thursday, Friday on the end of the week, but as a parent or a community member, or even as a board member, it might be useful to have even just the topics listed that were covered, and that, to be continued, who spoke, those kinds of things. Because I'll be frank, when I send out a newsletter kind of thing or information to people, just say, okay, this is what we talked about. And if that was on each committee, even I'm in 2 committees, but it might be useful just as the communication committee's thought, because I think the other comment is how do we share all the great things that are going on, and how do we share the fact that we really are looking into these things and we are examining these things as they're important. But anyway, that's enough of me for right now.
It is cumbersome for us to go through and find that. So.
Yeah, whether one of us takes the notes or, it's reviewed, not formalized as minutes, but just topical. Anyway, I will let you be there.
Thanks. Go ahead, Vice Chair Bondo.
Thank you. So, I think when I was about to talk about it, I think Chair, you already mentioned about you was mostly on the vertical team, and we didn't have a lot of reviews during the year about more that the specific on the learning strategies like they used to report and building on a different deep diving on the work they've been doing. And I think that one maybe challenge may come out with something. So I was keep wonder if we're gonna keep having the curriculum the curriculum and policy together, because it's been a little triggering for me to really go deeper on the curriculum, because we used to have really the specific topic on the curriculum, like the diploma standards, like, now we have the SOL, we have the redesign of the high school, so we have the summer program, we have the discipline. So are we aligning the policies really related to the curriculum and having separate just the policy for operational or building level? So it has been a struggle years combining those two communities. So I wonder if we're gonna continue having that way, so we can see how we can prioritize the specific topic on the curriculum, what we need to see happening, instead the staff, just bringing the curriculum topic to us. So are we building some of the priorities? Because what we see and what we share with the community and what we see going on around on the schools and student achievement.
I mean, I think, the adjustment to the committees was made during that time when, we were down 3 to 4 board members, how many ever it was at the time. I think 3 for a period, 4. So, I would wonder if the right time to revisit that would be the end of the board calendar. So like November into December to potentially revisit, kind of reestablishing the separates, because the same thing is true on the Finance Operations Personnel Committee. But, so, I mean, that's a thought that obviously delays it a couple months, but I guess my thought there is, that's, just functioning in the cycle of the board calendar and assignments, appointments. Probably those are things that are overcomable, right? If it wanted to happen sooner, it also gave Ryan a little bit of, just time to get on board and oriented. But as I say that coming out of my mouth, and particularly as I mentioned the finance piece, not to mention all the curriculum and policy bodies of work we're talking about, and feel the same tension a little bit of like how we'll possibly get all that work done and the amount of meeting time we have available. Just knowing there's some overlapping bodies of work, but just as we're talking about the FY25 kind of budget issues and things like that on the Finance Operations Personnel Committee could potentially benefit from some decoupling as well to just have a little bit more capacity. But that means, part of the challenge was, and this is obviously a board conversation and maybe for the board retreat, right, to kind of figure this out, right? And even maybe this minutes conversation of what's really useful to help organize the work in efficient ways, from a kind of just institutional knowledge perspective. So these, anyway, sorry, I lost my thread there, but yeah, I could imagine having that conversation there.
Yeah, because something that I want to see on my side, like a priorities on the staff harassment policy. So that's something that I want to see that one as a priority, but that's exactly why we need capacity, because sometimes we just get a policy right away, just clean up the policy, but we don't have enough time to go really deep diving on some of the specific, areas that we want to see some change and some improvement. So I think are we aligning those capacity with the more specific policy that we want, then we know this is going to make a lot of impact for staff and for the building as well. So that's something that we need, to take into consideration.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I think the comment I was going to say is it's just an implication of more meeting time for you all, right? Just because I think how folks get distributed amongst the committees then,
right.
As changes means there's membership on multiple, I think more committees than currently you have membership on. But anyway, we could map all that out and have a board conversation.
Yeah, I see. Yeah, thank you.
Superintendent Townsend, I'm just wondering about whether that was a direction we went back to curriculum policy. Like, do you have a sense about staff, district staff with Superintendent Nolly transitioning, like that would head that, like Jesse Robbins, like it just was trying to think like
It would probably be me
for the
both of
curriculum.
those.
It would be okay.
It would probably be me. I mean, I talked with Ryan about the policy one, maybe. But I would say in the short term, that would probably be me and the TAP directors.
I just wasn't sure if it was bringing somebody that hadn't been doing some of this into it. So, okay, that's good.
No, I mean, I think more so on the finance operations personnel side, which, just would mean, I think Barrett, I forget exactly what the configuration was because it was finance and personnel and then operations was separate.
Yeah.
I'm asking that, Becky, Mickey, I'm not sure if you were, but anyway, I think just some of the other cabinet level roles who haven't had necessarily staffing responsibilities related to committees might have a little more, but I don't think within kind of my team, I think it'll be topical that I can bring them in.
For sure, the financial was separate.
Was
a couple of years ago because it was a big chunk of capacity building there beside the operational and personnel. Yes.
So operations and personnel were together and finance was its own committee.
It was just it was just finance.
Yeah, I knew it wasn't 3, it was 2.
It was 2
topics, but we got alignment. Okay.
And then legislation also got bumped out. So that's so that's a whole body of work now that just sits with the chair, and it's kind of like ad hoc, and I can move into that work and not as needed.
Yeah.
So can I just pivot back to the priorities from it, because I heard Vice Chair Bondo mention the harassment policy. I just I'm just wondering where everyone's landing with that as a priority, because I just heard trying to how long ago was that we were just everything's just a blur for time frame here, and I'm trying to remember when we were having meetings discussing that. It was a while ago.
Yeah, I think it was around March, if I get it right. Yeah.
Was it?
A year ago, March. With me.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I think it was, we approved the workplace bullying in November of this year.
Yeah.
Just, and that's something I should say. And again, not necessarily advocating for, but, the reality is, particularly coming out of this legislative session, I would expect, the typical pattern is we'll get a big update in the fall from Drummond of all the policy updates we need to do to stay current with all the various pieces of legislation. So that's a kind of, broadly speaking, is like a 2-year cycle, some of which are just technical changes, right? But work that we should do, to keep the policy book current. So that again, maybe that kind of work historically, sat with the policy legislative committee, just in terms of keeping the policy books current and all that kind of jazz. So that's something that I anticipate in this coming year. We'll have to grapple with, some of those based on whatever comes out of the legislature and all the bills in front of them now.
Mickey, do you feel like there was anything in that policy? Because I was looking at, it was 4 years ago. So that's not a really out of date one, Aaron. So was there anything, Mickey, in particular, just in us starting that conversation that you felt was missing or that we needed to dive into further? Do you recall from a year ago?
I don't have it on the top of my head right now. Yeah. Is what it's 11, close to 11:20 p.m. So, but the thing is, I think is, well, we really want to get it back on conversation, because of some of the lines and just the piece that I really want to see is mostly on the equity, really strong language in the staff harassment, and more on the definition on the different kind of harassment on the staff, because we have a different ways for the student, bullying and everything related. So that's how we identify and having a clear definition of what we mean about the staff harassment, because when we look about genders and about everything else is totally different. When we look about for BIPOC harassment and different way on the mainstream, it's totally different. So how we balance those conversations and having a strong staff harassment policy who can combine the equity and inclusion. Yes.
Just for clarity, which policy exactly are we talking about? Does anybody know the name of the policy?
Is that right, Erin? ACAB?
Yes.
ACAB?
Yes. One, yeah.
Yes. ACAB.
Thank you. Sorry to interrupt, Julianne.
Go ahead,
No,
Julie.
that's fine. I was just going to look it up myself. My on all of that, just talking about policy and organizational, and before we decide to split or not split the committee, is it possible, Erin, just to get a printout of all of the policies? I mean, I'll be quite frank, the ink and the paper for me is more expensive than the ink and the paper for the district. And I printed out some as we worked through them, but just to get the A, C's and A, B's in order. And I know they're in categories. I've been thinking about a book to see it, but in the process of doing what you were just saying, going through, you stopped at D, going through and say, maybe finding ones that I could even look at and say, hey, did you see, what do you think about this? Just to save central office staff time. I mean, like I said, I have time to do that, not to make decisions on any of them, but just to go through and organize it to see what was what, and what might be something that needs to come forward a little earlier. Just a thought. Is that possible?
Yeah, I'm sure we can print. So, I mean, I hear two things there. One is, the logistical matter of printing a policy book, right? Having a hard copy binder of a hard copy policy book. So, yes, we can make that happen. And, happy to do that for all, any policy committee member that, would want one. So I don't know if Mickey, I know if you might want one. I know. Yeah. So we can get those made up over the summer. That's fine. In terms of, I'll strategize with Kate, the most efficient way to make that happen. But, and then I think just kind of coming, that can be as a resource for you. Again, like we said earlier, I think we have some tools to start to begin to establish the kind of like table of contents for better, in terms of that. So, this is the book, this is the policy last updated, so let me kind of dig on that front again, kind of policy.
Just to print out with no order, nothing extra to it, because, and I've been thinking about how coming on board, what I've just been in a complete blur of, and how, I'm digging here and there and saying what was here and what was there. And it would be having it all together in one place. I mean, because I'm on finance, and the things that are related to the finance committee, or the things, they're all there, and it would be just help my brain, to see what's there. And is I've had people ask me, do you have a policy for X, Y, and Z? And, having, for me, flipping through a page as opposed to getting to board docs, getting to, and then scrolling through that is just a lot harder.
Sure.
Some people it might not be. I was watching today the high school thing. Hey, are people zipping along with their computers and trying to, figuring out things quickly. And I'm kind of going, yes, well, I can do that, but not at that pace, kind of thing. So it's just, a tool, because I think, and I've mentioned this to Chair Lentz and all, there are just some things that I think a person on the board in a particular committee, it would just be helpful to be able to open up and turn to and say, these are the documents that are good for policy committee or the finance committee or the personnel committee. I mean, being on a board. Anyway, enough of that.
I just posted the link. So yes, hard copy, understood, and we can work on things. And just a reminder, I mean, I don't use it as often just because I feel very fluent in board doc, that kind of thing. So that works for me. But, this is a better kind of presentation of it, of the link on the website, and draws directly from board docs. So it's a little easier to search, right? You can kind of keyword search the whole policy book at once. And get that, and they're all there. So
it looks a lot better like that. Yeah.
So
visually,
and again, with the function of the website, they all translate. So it was really built to make it, accessible to multilingual families. So they all show up as translated, depending on the language
If
setting.
people can get to board docs.
Well, no, not from board docs, just from the website. If they're like under the board, so you get there, just like it, says staff, families, board, whatever on board, it's a drop down board policies, and it shows up if you click on the board anywhere. There's always a link to go to that policy page there. So.
All right.
I want to make sure we wrap up pretty quickly here to try to keep to an hour. So can I just circle back for a minute? I just peeked at the ACAB again and thinking that, honestly, 4 years doesn't sound like a lot, but even just looking at some of the language, I do feel like that's a point of just like, even over several years, like the language we're using about specifically, marginalized group, it changes. And I do feel like looking over that feels important. But also just kind of the steps outlined in the process of making, I feel like that part, is that all accurate, or do we need to do more clarifying of that? So I guess I would like to advocate for, maybe it's not on the very right away list of our agenda, but I would like to see it, coming up soon, to come back to ACAB. And then maybe just, so Erin, am I right in thinking that so for our meeting in August 22nd, would we be doing IJJ at that meeting?
I think given, and we'll have two shots at it. So we can, Sarah and Mickey, we can work with Ryan on full board agenda setting, because we'd want to do the workshop about it in general before the committee meeting, which should be fine.
Oh, great. Okay.
Which I think is a doable thing.
Okay.
Just particularly given the schedule of our meetings. So we'll have two board meetings before.
Right. Okay.
Before we have this.
Okay. And then do you think it's reasonable to try to do that JFABD, the homeless students one, or do you think we can, I just like if that could get done?
Well, it might be good. Let me, Priscilla works on the teacher contract.
Oh, right. We need Priscilla. Okay.
So it might need to be September when we come back.
That's fine. I just, wanted to make sure it was back on our radar to get that one.
Yeah, I'd like to clean that one up, just given particularly, we talked about it and we had a very positive engagement. It came up in part because we were just having a routine compliance visit around the McKinney-Vento program. So it was just one of the things on the checklist of the policy. And we were like, oh yeah, need to, we had all the required language embedded elsewhere. It was really looking at the truancy policy and compulsory attendance policies, where kids can't be considered truant if they have absence issues related to homelessness. But it just then popped for us that it was out of date. So given what we're managing, right, in terms of influx and what the immediate future holds, it'd be good to revisit. So, but I think that's probably September. So if we could say this and then pick that one up in September.
And I think that's a great reminder. Just that was helpful to think about in the fall with legislate, the review from Drummond, just knowing that we also have at that time of the year, we have to look at those updates. So we need to just make sure there's space for that too.
Yeah.
Because there's always more we could do, but lots of good work this past year, and glad to also have a little break in July. Everybody deserves a little break, right? To come back in August and get back to work on some of these prayers. So anything else before we wrap up, that any burning priorities that anybody didn't get to touch on?
Just to make sure, Chair, about the library ones. So are we bringing that one back in?
It sounds like that has to go to the full board at one of our August meetings first, and then it would come to our August policy.
Okay.
And again, the full board is just the presentation of the kind of set of related policies and what the changes we have made have been.
What's already been
So
done.
that when we look at the proposed additional changes, it's kind of with that context, right? Because that was what was clear is kind of Meg was bringing forward some tweaks to the changes we'd already made, but the committee was like, but wait, we don't know about the changes we already made.
Yeah.
Or most of, a lot of
And with
folks.
newer board members just not
Right,
having
let's
background.
Step it back a moment. And I think given the way that's situated in the world today, as well, that visibility at the full board level of just what our policies are, what kind of proposed changes might be, and then we'll be able to, I think, move it pretty quickly from there. So then
So does that answer that? So I think the goal would be to get it moving forward after that step and then to the committee and back to the board, correct?
Yeah.
As a priority for the beginning of the year.
Yeah, I think that's a timeline of potentially board approval by the end of September, right? If we do the workshop in August, discuss the proposed revisions in committee in our August meeting. Ideally, we're positioned because of that pre-work to vote it out of committee at that point, right? We've had some discussion. We're coming with already informed kind of recommendations about that. And then we can do first read and second read at the full board level. So.
Okay. Great. Oh, go ahead, Carolyn.
Just one question that is not related to what we've been talking about, but just making sure that we get the public comment policy in the books. I'm going to change my language for the August board meetings and the kind of intro to public comment. So we'll see how that goes, but that would be great if we can make sure that it's posted. Thank you.
On the work plan. Yep. Mm-hmm.
Okay. And that's only, there's nothing in our level. You're just reminding that at the board level, we have to, okay.
Yeah, just the whole process of getting it from approval, which we did at the last meeting, to posting. So yeah, that's part of what Kate and I are working on.
Great. Well, thank you everybody for, just getting our heads together. It's helpful with so much going on in so many different areas. To just look at what we have been doing and what's coming forward. And I appreciate everybody's engagement so much and your steadfast work, Superintendent Townsend, for so long here. I appreciate it so much, and hope everybody can have a lovely July. And we'll get back to things in August. So our next meeting is August 22nd. At 5:30. We'll have had a couple board meetings before that too. Do I need to ask anyone to make a motion to finish the meeting? Okay, great. Thanks, board member Hoffman. Everyone in favor. So at 6:31, we're adjourned. Happy summer, everyone.